Hello and welcome. I'm Jonathan Baggaley, Chief Executive of the PSHE Association, the national body for personal, social health and economic education. And we are delighted to be working with financial education charity Young Money to bring you Twilight workshops this week to celebrate Talk Money Week. After a fantastic session yesterday looking at successful financial education in primary schools, we're going to be looking this evening at what makes for successful financial education in secondary schools. Then tomorrow, we'll be wrapping up with a session which will cover money-related issues of greatest concern to young people right now, from gambling and fraud to the cashless society and cryptocurrency. Before I introduce Russell, Kat, and Zoe, who are going to be discussing their work in secondary schools, I just wanted to speak briefly about the importance of ensuring all children and young people benefit from a financial education that prepares them for this increasingly complex world. We all know that PSHE education is about preparing young people for their futures, which is why at the PSHE Association, we want to ensure that the E in PSHE, which stands for economic, is given the status it deserves. When taught well, it perfectly complements all of that fantastic work taking place in citizenship and maths, but focuses more on the personal aspects of economic well-being and the influences on our financial decisions. We led the campaign for statutory PSHE education, and though we've had significant success, now that health and relationships, education aspects are compulsory, financial education and economic well-being mustn't suffer in comparison. After all, our physical health, mental health, and relationships can heavily affect our economic well-being and vice versa. So we'll be working hard with our membership of teachers in schools and organizations like Young Money and the Money and Pension Service to provide guidance and resources to support you with this important work. I'm delighted to introduce today our session, which will be led by Russell Winnard, Director of Programs and Services at Young Money. Young Money is part of the national charity Young Enterprise, which provides resources, training and support to anyone working with young people to develop their financial capability. They have over 20 years experience of working with a wide range of educators to develop and deliver high quality financial education for young people. Russell began his career as an accountant within the Lloyd's insurance market, but his time teaching highlighted the need for all young people to develop knowledge, skills and attitudes beyond the traditional academic learning, and prompted his decision to join the charitable sector supporting schools to address that. We're also delighted to be joined by Kat O'Gara, who began her teaching career in 2005, working within the mathematics department before becoming head of department. He has a passion for teaching financial literacy across the department and integrating it into schemes of work, both in maths and across the schools. 18 months ago, Kat took on a new role in the school, which saw her redesigning the PSHE curriculum. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Kat has a real passion for giving students the tools they need to equip themselves for their lives after school. Alongside Kat, we have Zoe Redmill, a qualified accountant and chartered tax advisor who started her career with PwC before spending 10 years as a partner working in audit, accountancy and tax at a local accountancy practice. With good news for children and young people, she retrained in 2018 as a maths teacher and currently leads on financial maths at the Romsey School at Successful Comprehensive Approach. I am really looking forward to hearing their insights and learning from them today. So I hope you will find it a really useful session. Just note the Q&A box is open. We have staff from the PSHE Association and Young Money on hand to answer your questions. We've got quite a lot of you with us today, so if we can't get to your question, don't hesitate to contact us or Young Money afterwards, and we'll provide contact details in the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Russell to take us through today's session.
Super. Thanks, Jono. A very warm welcome to everybody watching, and a very warm welcome to you, Kat and Zoe. Hello.
Hello.
So to start with, Jono did a little bit of a background on you, but what would be really useful, and I think to sort of set that scene, would be if you're able to give a little bit of background to your schools and their sort of demographics, the intake, etc., just so that everybody can kind of visualize that as they're listening to the conversation as we go through. And Kat, maybe if we go to you first.
Okay, so I'm at a secondary school which is run by the LA in Stockport. We have approximately 1,300 on roll with a rising intake each year. We're up to about 270 each year at the moment. Approximately 25% pupil premium coming in. That's about it, really.
Right, super. And Zoe?
Yes, hello. I'm from the Romsey School. We're a comprehensive mixed school in Hampshire. We take our students from the Romsey itself, its outlying villages, but also a large proportion of our students come from the Southampton city area as well. So we have quite a wide mix of students from those rural areas right through to Southampton city centre coming in on the trains and buses each day. Our school size is about 1,200.
Super, thank you very much. Now I know the reason that we've invited you here and to showcase what you're doing in your respective schools is because you're both from Centre of Excellence in Financial Education Skills, and you've worked towards that. And I know that there'll be a lot of people watching that aren't sure what a Centre of Excellence is and what it might mean to you. So I wonder, again, if we can go maybe Zoe first this time, just a little bit of what being a Centre of Excellence means to you and what it means within the school.
Absolutely, thank you. So being a Centre of Excellence for us has given us access to training, it's given us access to support and a small amount of funding in which enabling us to embed our financial education throughout our curriculum. So by taking part in the assurance process, it's ensured that what we're offering is quality assured, and we are able to let our students know, also our parents, but also prospective parents as well, know that our quality of financial education is considered excellent, and we have that ongoing support from Young Money to help us keep that accreditation, and we go through that process every 3 years.
Super. And Kat, what has Centre of Excellence meant for you? What maybe you doing differently now to what you were doing before?
So we are due to go through our third accreditation in December. So we've been accredited now for 6 years. I took this over from a different member of staff in 2017 when we were due to go through our next accreditation. And a lot of the things that we've put into place at the start, we've managed to change again. So we put a bid into the head to ask to have separate finance lessons for our students, which was accepted this year, and we now have lessons, standalone lessons for 9 and 10. We've also looked at what qualifications we could offer the students. So we took on AS level accounting for a short period of time. So we had one cohort that went through that. We've also had a cohort that's gone through the making the most of your money on the Open University as well.
Super. Thank you. I'm interested to know, you said you went to the head to ask for that, because there will be so many people watching that think there's no way I'm going to get dedicated time for financial education. It's got to be embedded within subject area. But I'm just wondering what that ask looked like. What sort of arguments did you use?
The ask looked like a letter, which I'd laid out every single point that I thought was important. When we originally put the proposal together, we included it to have year 9 careers lessons as well, so that the teacher who'd be teaching it would have finance and careers in the same session. Now, we've actually got in year 9, it's on a rotation with some of the other subjects, such as music technology, food, technology itself. So it works quite well with there. In year 10, it's on a rotation with careers. So for part of the year, they have the career sessions, and then the other part of the year, they have financial literacy.
Super. I mean, it's clear to me that there's an awful lot, not just going on within both of your schools, but there's an awful lot of support for financial education within your respective schools, and that is important. Trying to carve out time within a full curriculum is really, really challenging. So to have that support is really welcome. To get that level of support, I think you have to be able to show the value of financial education to senior leaders. And I wonder, Zoe, what for you is that value of financial education? Maybe for the young people, but maybe more broadly, if you think there is a value more broadly as well.
So from our point of view, we think financial education gives people the skills, it gives young people the skills and knowledge that's going to help them make that step from education into employment and into their future lives. So we think by spending time on maybe purchasing decisions, thinking about needs and wants, talking about different insurance options, how pay is going to work, how taxes are going to work for them in future, what we're giving those students is a framework in order to build on in their future lives. We're never going to give them everything they are ever going to need to know about their financial future, but what we hope we're doing is giving them enough information so that they know, A, it's even out there, and B, what sources of help and support there are, so that they really can move forward as they go into the future with some information and knowledge that they can take forward. What we have found whenever we do exit surveys from year 11, especially in particular with the PSHE curriculum, that they do want more on financial matters than they, even though we provide a lot, they want more. And we're looking at moving that through into year 10, whereas historically we've only managed that year 9. So we've done it in maths in year 10, but we're moving that into our PSHE programme year 10 as well, so that they feel that they've had enough time to talk about the things that they are worried about or interested about really for the future.
I think that's really key, isn't it? And you'll both be aware that a fundamental part of Centre of Excellence is that listening to student voice and having young people feeding in to say, this we feel this is important to us, and for our futures this is important to us. I think it's really hard then to ignore that it's something that as educators we should be addressing. So I think that's great. And it's really encouraging to hear that young people are saying, even though I know that you're providing a very high level of provision, that they're wanting even more. It's one of those oddities that we sometimes see money as a bit dull, grey, boring, but the reality is that we use it every single day, and young people are fascinated, and it's real and it's relevant. So really, really good to hear.
A lot of the teachers on the call will have already taken part in the RSE statutory mandatory, the questionnaire that you had to do to the students for the student voice. Now, because ours was in the COVID era, we put all ours online, so the students that were at home learning at the time filled that in online for us, and we got a lot of our evidence at that point for more financial lessons from that. So a lot of the teachers who are already on this will probably have a lot of the evidence that the students are wanting more finance lessons. It's just using that evidence to put that appeal in to the powers that be within schools.
Yeah, and that is tricky, and I can understand, and I know from speaking to many sort of senior leadership teams, it's a really tricky balancing act. I mean, one of the things that we find at Young Money is really useful is that integration into the curriculum. So you're not actually needing to carve out timetabled lessons for financial education, but we're thinking about the different contexts that you use within subjects. And you're both maths teachers, and I'm sure there are relevant contexts there, but equally I've seen it delivered really, really well through drama or through music and creating money raps, money scenarios that are played out. I wonder if you've got examples, maybe Zoe, from both maths and maybe beyond maths, as to how you've gone about integrating financial education into the curriculum.
Yes, so what we've found that we can incorporate it in many different ways. Firstly, by looking at what we were doing already, and we found that actually there was quite a lot going on within our careers curriculum, and we could just pick up and perhaps add on a little bit more in that area. Also, we're covering it as well in the PSHE programme. And then we looked also through our maths programme. So one example would be that year 7, we are dealing with adding and subtracting decimal numbers. Now, what we do once we've checked they can add and subtract a decimal number is we then actually spend a lesson on financial maths, and they are looking at a bank statement and they're doing the calculations using decimal numbers. But during that lesson, we are taking the opportunity to discuss what each of those line items are on their bank statement, for example. So what does pay mean? What does rent mean? What is that phone bill? Oh, I didn't know you needed to pay for a phone, says most of the children. So that's what we're doing by building it into the curriculum that we've already got. We're just sliding in that financial maths at every opportunity.
Super. And Kat, have you got any examples of how you've integrated financial education within different curriculum areas?
Financial education can be integrated into every single curriculum area. So when I first started with this, one of the biggest problems I had was it was viewed as a maths thing, and it's not a maths thing, it's a whole school thing. Everybody needs to be financially literate to get somewhere in life. And to put our students out into that real wide world and to not give them that financial literacy, to that understanding, the basic understanding of money, you're setting them up to fail, and you're setting them up for mental health problems as well, because one of the biggest indicators in adults of mental health problems is problems with money. Now, some of the things that we've looked at doing are food, for example. You've got a budget to make a meal. Why not use that when you're planning your lessons? Look at the prices of food. Look at how much you need of each one. Do you necessarily need to go out and buy that large 500 gram packet, or do you need a 250 gram packet? If you're looking at buying the 500 gram packet, is it then value for money if you make double the amount, because then you can freeze it? And getting the students to actually think about the practicalities of using that money. Looking at bills, I mean, Zoe's already mentioned the mobile phone bill. There's been times within maths lessons that I've asked the students to calculate the value of a bill, and they've come with some ridiculous number of £10,000. And you start there thinking it can't be £10,000 because you don't earn enough money to pay a bill of £10,000 plus all your other bills on top of that. We looked at integrating it across different parts. So English, when they're doing different texts, if there's a financial implication on that text, they'll bring in speaking about financial decisions and how that person's thought about it and what feelings that they've had and how it's impacted on their lives. And the same with history, because there's been a lot of decisions that have been happening that have changed the course of the way the world works, and they are financial based. So it's very much, like Zoe says, it can't be something that, oh, today we're just going to do this. I know we do have our standalone financial lessons, and they look at things like wants and needs, preparing for adult life, loans, savings, and different financial products that are out there so the students get used to them. But Zoe's completely right. They have to be integrated and integrated well. Otherwise, the students just see them as some kind of add-on that's not really there for them.
And do you think, Kat, just to follow up on that, do you think that by delivering some of those subject areas using money and finance as a context, do you think that actually helps engagement with that subject area as well?
Sometimes, yeah, because it buys them into real life. They understand why. For years, even before I started doing this, when we were teaching compound interest and depreciation within maths, I started talking about my mortgage and the impact that the mortgage has and how much interest you end up paying at the end of a mortgage. And the students were buying into it because it was a real life decision that I'd had to make at the time.
Yeah, I see it all the time. If you can make it, if you can introduce a financial context, something that begins to make that kind of real and relevant link, then there's that greater engagement. And I'm really, really pleased that as a maths teacher, head of department for maths, you've said at the very beginning that this is not just a maths thing, because I don't believe that it is. I think maths is really important, but there's a whole other side of financial education and being financially capable that we use to help make our decisions. It's not always based on maths. You know, we make a lot of our financial decisions based on our and our heart and our feelings and our values and our ethics, and none of that is going to be supported within maths, because we'll purely be looking at the numbers. So it's that combination, and I think, Kat, you've got a really interesting combination there of leading on PSHE but also maths. Have you been able to bring them together at all?
So I actually, when I took on the head of PSHE, because I took it on as part of a wider school role, which, believe me, you don't want me to go into, I gave up the head of maths at that point, and now one of my colleagues does that. So I quite nicely view it as just a maths teacher with a wider school responsibility.
Super. Okay, and I suppose, Zoe, you've transitioned from industry into teaching, and you've taken a practical use of money and finance into a classroom and turning that into learning. I just wondered if there are things that you've brought from a kind of professional role into a teaching and learning role that you think has been useful.
I think from my point of view, what's been useful is I've had a wider skill set that then I can help the other teachers who are going to be teaching those topics. So, for example, if we're going to be talking about different types of bank account, the slides, etc., provided by Young Murray talk about PSHE compliant bank accounts, and there was no one on our staff team that even knew what that was except for me. So I was able to let all the other staff members know what that was about. And by having that background, I've got that wider knowledge, which means that if a student does take you off on a tangent, I can always follow them. So this year I actually took a lesson. We do a whole week financial maths for our year 10s, and it became apparent that one particular class were very, very interested in what the definition of tax avoidance might be, and whether they could come up with a scheme that was going to go around the law and all of these sort of things. And it was apparent that it's not an ideal thing for any teacher to have to teach off the cuff. But we actually we made the most of it, and I took that class for a lesson, and we went through like you say, the ethical issues that are around paying taxes, and how what we are paying is contributing to our wider society. And then I could answer their detailed questions on, if my mother does this, which that background means I'm able to do that. But I think the school really, what they value is that just that wider knowledge that means that other teachers have someone to go and ask.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because we know that there is a lack of confidence amongst teachers in general. It usually comes out relatively high that there is a lack of confidence in delivering financial education in general. So I suppose your experience you're able to bring and share across your teaching staff. I mean, I suppose have you seen that lack of confidence across other members of staff? Maybe Zoe, if we go to you first.
I think it potentially, if they've got their lesson in front of them, they're absolutely fine. But I think where the lack of confidence sometimes comes from is that they themselves might not have a positive relationship with money themselves. So actually, it's a really difficult discussion for them to be having with their students if they themselves actually struggle to budget, or are finding that they don't have enough money at the end of the month, and then being asked to talk about that sort of thing with their students is quite difficult. And knowing that there's someone who's there and checked the slides and got their back and is able to help out, I think that's what helps them there.
Yeah. So, Kat, have you experienced any challenges around people involved, staff involved in delivery not feeling confident, and if so, how have you addressed that?
So when we were first looking at bringing in the standalone lessons, the teacher of PSHE, which I have with me, asked to not teach them, which is fair enough. And we actually have they're all on maths teachers' timetables. funnily enough, because they're the people that are more confident with delivering anything that's anything to do with numbers. Saying that, I have had members of staff come up to me beforehand and say, "You're making me teach a lesson about pensions. All I know is this money comes out of my bank, out of my wage. I don't have a clue what's happening with it after that point." And it wasn't until they read through the information. I mean, our lessons are a complete and utter mixture of everything. So we've got lessons that we've combined from both Young Money, the PSHE Association, the Martin Lewis textbook that was sent to all LA secondary schools. We also got into EC publishing. So we've got an entire mixture of everything, and we've just put it all together and made something like 29 lessons out of it all, so that the students have got access to those throughout.
Yeah, that's superb. I mean, I think there is no one size fits all. There's never going to be, and actually, I think financial education will look different in every single school. I'm sure if we compared both of your schools, it would look different, and I'd expect that across any school. And I think having that range of support and materials and organisations that can come in and deliver workshop, all of that, it's needed, because you'll pull from that what's going to work for you in your school for your young people. So I think that's a great way to build up that provision, and I suppose that helps a little bit with teacher confidence, because the way in which it's being delivered, it can be differentiated for different teachers. They can pick and choose what kind of resources and tools that they're using. No, I think that's really positive. I'm going to stick with challenges just for a moment before we move on to more positive things, because there are challenges with introducing financial education, and we've highlighted that kind of confidence of teachers. I just wonder if there are any other areas that you've found a challenge, and maybe Kat, if we begin with you.
I think so when I started doing this, the biggest challenge I had was I had a different food teacher in than I have at present, and she told me that there was no maths in food whatsoever. Never mind money, there was just no maths. And I was like, there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram. Like, no maths. And it was that complete barricade that seemed to come down that had anything to do with numbers, which was a couple of members of staff that have. And because they've not done maths since they were in the GCSEs, which is fair enough. If it's not for you, I've not done history since I did my GCSE. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But it's getting them to present it in a more positive light to the students. As I'm sure Zoe's had this problem, and most of the people on this call will be PSHE colleagues. But there's one thing that really winds maths people up, and it's not meant to be a maths thing, this, but just bear with me for a second, is as an adult, you would never admit to not being able to read. But as an adult, it seems perfectly acceptable for you to admit that you're not very good with money, or you can't do numbers. And it's going to take a lot of work, but it's getting a population that not necessarily feel ashamed to admit that they're not good with money or numbers, but can admit it and do something about it. Yeah,
it is a big challenge, and we're doing this event as part of Talk Money Week, and it's part of that raising awareness, getting young people and families, parents, other educators, talking about money, not being scared of it, not to stick their head in the sands, not to ignore it, but to start that process of engaging with. I think it's a really important one, and you'll have those challenges across schools. There'll be young people that don't want to engage, but there'll also be staff that don't want to engage, and thinking about how you change that. It's a really interesting conundrum, but you've managed it. You've got a whole school approach going on, so definitely you've managed it. Zoe, any other challenges from your side that you've found with kind of integrating and embedding financial education?
I think from the other thing to add is that for students, this can be very emotive. And so giving them the opportunity to not share a personal story is very important, but understanding that if they would like to talk about it, that is fine. So I think that we've had issues where individual students have chosen perhaps not to take part in a particular discussion, and the staff know that that's okay, and that for some families it isn't something that they can talk about at home with confidence. And by having the opportunity to do it in school in a ring-fenced environment where the examples on the board are not personal, that means that they can engage without having to put their own personal family experiences on that. And I think to integrate it well, people need that understanding that actually this isn't a maths lesson that everyone is going to, they might not like it or like it. This might be an emotional response that is happening as well, depending on how their family, the family's relationship with money as well.
I think it's a really good point. There are in some instances, safeguarding and disclosure issues, which we have to consider as well. It is an important area, and we would advise anyone considering embedding financial education to also take that into account. And as you say, that emotive experience, recognizing that there will be some young people potentially in classes who don't receive things like pocket money, being aware of that, so we don't speak about pocket money as if it's something that everybody receives. We need to acknowledge that, and I'm sure that's something that as professionals you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but it's always worth just having that in the back of your mind to make sure that we're not presenting something to young people which they can't see themselves in that picture. No, super. So we've looked at some of those challenges, and great challenges actually, and I'd like to move us to a little more positive place, which is whether there have been any kind of support for other whole school priorities through the embedding of financial education, expected or unexpected. Just has it contributed to any other whole school priorities? And Kat, we'll come to you first.
The big one, obviously, the embedding of the mandatory SRE guidelines, which came in 2020. That was a massive whole school priority for ourselves, and it's helped towards that. The other thing that we've done is we've got a year 8 drop down day coming up in December. So we've got one in December and one in February, and half the year group on each. And we've got young gambling coming in for each one of those to deliver a session, so that they're talking to the students about more that what's happening on with them, rather than the stuff that we're doing, which is the future, to try and equip them for their lives when they leave us. They're looking at doing things like loot boxes that you spoke about earlier, and the gambling that goes on behind those. So it's that opportunity to help engage as well in the mental health for the students, because so many of them from the last 12, 18 months have just been stuck on the different platforms that they use, buying the stuff that they need to just get them something through. So it's all contributing towards that, and at our school, mental health is something that we do want to help our students with.
Definitely. You highlighted before the link, really strong link that there is between money problems and mental health issues. No, so it is a really, really important area, and actually some of those topics, loot boxes being a prime example, we're going to pick up there's a webinar same time tomorrow where we're going to pick up on some of those key money related issues which are affecting young people, and teachers may be hearing in tutor groups along the corridor that young people maybe don't even realise could result in problems or challenges. So it's good to highlight. Thank you. Zoe, same question really. Has introducing financial education contributed in other ways to school priorities?
I think the one to add, obviously, what Kat's talked about is relevant to us as well. The one to add on is our Gatsby benchmarking around our careers education as well, because so much of that can be linked. We're able to really tick off some of those key benchmarks around learning from careers and labour market information and that sort of thing as well. So I think that's the thing to add on there.
Super. Yeah, that's a very important one, and some of those Gatsby benchmarks are quite difficult to achieve. So hopefully, being able to contribute into some of those is really useful.
Yeah.
Super. An area which is becoming increasingly important is the influence that parents and carers have on children and young people, and there's quite a lot actually being done within the primary space, where there's probably more of a link between school and parents, in that parents are in the school or around the school premises on a daily basis, which you don't get at secondary. Sometimes you're very unlikely to even meet a parent other than parents' evening once a year. But have you managed at all to create any connection with your parent carer community through embedding financial education? So, Zoe, maybe come to you first.
Yeah, we've definitely found that home is going to be the most important influence really for young people in terms of finances. But what we found is that by having our financial education lessons, the students have had impartial information that they have then been able to think about their own personal circumstances in relation to, even if they've chosen not to share that. And we've talked about using depersonalized case studies to allow that. But what it's helped them do is to then take part in discussions at home, or perhaps understand the discussions that are happening at home. And we know that topic can be really difficult, and also for the family themselves. So what we talk about is the need for, if they want to go home and talk to their grown-ups, which we absolutely encourage them to do, is to be sensitive to their family's feelings, and to understand that their family might not talk about it in the open manner that I'm personally prepared to talk about, and like Kat said about her mortgage, for example. And we've had some really excellent feedback from students, but also from parents as well, that they've really valued that the time that they've talked about their financial lessons with their parents. And we've had parents writing in to say, they've had such great dinner table discussion over what has happened in that lesson during the day or whatever. And in particular, during lockdown, we did press ahead with those lessons, and we found that there were parents listening in and then able to carry on those discussions with their young people at home as well. So although we're not directly communicating to parents, we are absolutely encouraging our students to talk about it with their grown-ups, but have that empathy that their grown-ups might find it difficult as well. Yeah,
it's that vertical transfer of knowledge sometimes.
Absolutely.
We've certainly seen circumstances where parents have said, as a result of my child receiving financial education in school, they've come home, we've realized that we're on a variable rate mortgage and we could save so much more if we move to a fixed rate. Those kind of things where that knowledge is being imparted in an upwards manner. Yeah. Kat, was there anything that you'd want to add there around parental carer engagement? Oh, we've lost your mic, I think. No worries. If you work on the mic, I'll go to a different question and we'll come back to you. No, unfortunately not. So sure. So Zoe, just whilst Kat plays around with the microphone, see if we can get that working again. I'm very conscious that we've got a lot of teachers who will be watching this and potentially there not being any financial education within their setting. Although that's a little bit of a lie, because as you know, every setting's doing some financial education. It's just people might not know about it. But are there any kind of top tips that you would give them if they're thinking, as a result of this, there is more that we need to do in school? It's something that I can see there's a need for, but I don't really know how to go about doing this. Any top tips you'd give? Okay,
so separately from a PSHE curriculum where hopefully you can steal some time and get some particular lessons, and I would really recommend, people are asking for some ideas. My Money Week is a really good source of ideas, and what they do there is their whole they produce new lessons every year, but they keep their back catalogue as well. So you're able to go back and find some other things there. So I think that's a really good start and you don't have to do it during My Money Week at all. But talk to your maths team, and I would never let a percentages lesson go past without talking about VAT, talking about what the rate of VAT is, working out a calculation for VAT. So that's the sort of thing that, even though we're doing a relatively dry lesson on percentages, I will always get, whenever it's a percentage of amount, I will always get a VAT question in there, and I will then say, does anyone know what the rate of VAT is? Do you know what the point is? So I'm sliding it in absolutely everywhere we can. I talked about the bank statements with our year 7s, subtracting our decimals. Whenever we're doing percentage increases, I always put up a lovely outrageous salary that I'm earning and give myself an outrageous pay rise, and we work out my percentage increase. At that point, what I will always then just slide in is when you're a grown-up and checking your pay slip, if you're told you're given a 3% increase, it's very important that you check that you have been given a 3% increase. So those are the sort of things that every single time something comes up that I can link in, I'm always there. I'm linking it in. Whenever we talk about medians, I've always got the graph of median household income in there. I will always then talk about the lady paying the most income tax, and then that relating to the betting industry. And then I always go on a short betting route via that. So hopefully, talk to your maths team. They're slotting a lot as they go, and they can slot in more. VAT is a classic example that people don't necessarily think about, but actually you can always calculate 20%. So I hope, and someone's just popped in about a subject review tool. Yeah, absolutely. Maths will slot in a lot for you, but they won't necessarily put that financial aspect on it. Like Kat says, we'll do that compound interest calculation, but we won't say, the reason we need that is when we want to go and get a mortgage, or if we're taking out a loan that we're not paying back on our credit card, that interest is going to be calculated in a compound manner. That's the time you can get that slotted in.
Yeah, definitely. I think compound interest is always very useful to apply when looking at savings as well, because suddenly they no longer want simple interest; they want compound interest.
Yes.
I was, as you were talking there, I was thinking back a long time ago to when I was teaching, and one of the things that I always found really useful, and it kind of links into a lot of those areas you're talking about, was BBC News. I would literally go and have a look on the money section of BBC News for that day and just find what was topical. And we would end up having a discussion around just those very things, not necessarily from a maths perspective, but just from a financial education perspective. And this inflation thing, which is moving upwards. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for the wider economy? Really great tool, I thought. Kat, should we see if we can hear you? Can we hear you now?
Hope so.
Hey, excellent, that's brilliant. So this question was really about that we've got lots of teachers watching today who I'm sure there is financial education going on in their schools, but they may be wanting to do more. They might be at that kind of early stage, and just wondering if you've got any kind of hints and tips that you would advise on, things to implement, things to look out for.
Can I just go back to your previous question about linking with parents?
So, yes, of course.
Before the pandemic hit, we'd made links with our local credit union, and we'd arranged for the credit union to come in and have a stand at parents' evening so that they could advertise the products that they have to the parents. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the credit union. So they look at loaning the money to the parents and well, to whoever needs it, and then taking it back. But they also teach them financial literacy at the same time, so that hopefully they wouldn't then have to go back to the credit union again to get a second loan. So we'd had that conversation with them, and we'd arranged for them to come in and do things like that. We'd spoken as well about with the food teachers about getting a evening where parents could come in and looking at doing low budget cooking. So that was how for them to save money as well, and looking at budgeting. So we'd got quite a range of things that were planned, which unfortunately COVID then destroyed for us all. But it's look, you're talking about how to engage the parents in it, focusing in on how they can save money. One of the other things that we had planned was that we were going to put a competition out to our students. So there's a prize of £20. How could you spend that £20 and have your perfect Saturday night with your family? And then the winning one would have got the £20. And
superb.
That was all the start of March 2020. The end of March 2020 came. In relation to your other one, the early stage, one thing that we did that made it easier was we got in other people to come and talk for us. So there are lots and lots of different banks who are very, very happy. Well, they were before everything, but are starting to be happy again. We had, this is where I look a bit stupid because I can't remember. It's the one with the umbrella. Anyway, they came in.
Okay.
And they did a lot of work for us.
Everyone's now googling the bank with the umbrella. You know that.
The umbrella it's got the umbrella in the logo, and I cannot for the life of me remember which one it is. They came in and did 2 or 3 years of delivering to the whole of year 10 for 2 or 3 hours on different things. And it was at that point that we were watching it thinking, these students are interested in what they're doing. Somebody's put it legal in general. Thank you very much. These students are really, really interested in what they're doing. However, because they're an entire year group, there's 200 and odd of them listening to one presentation, they don't have that opportunity to ask questions. Also, you had the ones that didn't really want to do something, that were kind of, because there was 200 and odd of them, taking that opportunity to not do something, which is why we brought it down into certain year groups. I mean, we did have certain people that came in that the students found very, very dry because they weren't used to delivering to that many students. And it was very much we could do a better job of this, which is why the head decided to help support us with everything. But there is so much out there. People will come in and help you with so much. It's untrue. And quite a lot of them don't charge, which with my PSHE budget, if it's anything like yours, it's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just flicking through some of the chat actually, and just linking to that, Kat. Andrea has asked, I can find my lessons rather bland. I find it hard to write exciting lessons. I just wondered if there was just kind of feeding in off of what you just said. What is there any advice you'd give to Andrea?
I do look at some of the videos that are available as well on YouTube. Obviously, watching them very, very carefully first, because some of the ones out there are horrendous, but there are some pretty good ones. It just depends on what you're looking for and what you want in the students to take away from the lessons with them. The resources that Martin Lewis sent out with Young Money are very good, and the students really bought in a lot to those. And it's just giving them the opportunity to talk about it. So like Zoe says, that they are talking, they want to learn how to do this. They want it for their adult life. And it's not necessarily something that they're being taught at home, because we're moving towards a cashless society. You don't pay for things in the same way that you used to do. I mean, I've started to make sure that I take money out with me, so that when I'm taking my child's 5, so when I'm taking them into a shop, I'm like, right, there's £5. That costs £1. Go and give it to the lady and bring it back and tell me how much change you're going to be getting. And it's those little skills that they're just missing for some of our students.
Yeah, we've not covered it today. I think we're going to cover it tomorrow, but I'm glad it's cropped up. That cashless society, move to cashless society, is one of those challenges that we're experiencing, because no longer have you got that tangible transaction process. It's tap and go, or it's even using your mobile phone, and it creates a different understanding, or maybe quite a warped understanding of what's actually happening. So that's one that we will pick up on tomorrow's webinar.
Can I just say as well, there's been a lot of audit tools that have gone into the chat, which I've seen. One of the best audit tools that I had was the one that was sent to me by Young Money to actually do my audit to get the financial Centres of Financial Excellence Award. And I don't think that one's been mentioned in there yet.
Well, thank you for mentioning it, Kat. So that is an audit tool which comes, which works in combination with the Financial Education Planning Framework, which is an outcomes framework that's differentiated by age. So if anyone wants to see that framework, go to the Young Money website and just look for Financial Education Planning Framework. It'll give you all sorts of outcomes for different ages of young people. Not fixed, it's entirely up to you as to how you use that. Zoe, I was just going to come back to you really to finish off, to ask a similar question to Andrea's point. How does someone really liven up those lessons, and maybe where do you get your inspiration, your tools from? Where do you look for that sort of stuff?
So we've got a number of different sources to get our lessons. We've got the Young Money, My Money Week we tend to use with our Year 7s. Our Year 8s, we do more of a financial careers based. So if I've got this career, this is the sort of money, is that going to create the lifestyle that I would like? What might I need to spend my money on? And we're looking this year actually to use the Young Enterprise offering for that, and that is external visitors. Year 9s, we use My Bank to come in, and they do groups of 30. So we get a double, like 2-hour period, groups of 30. They come in, and they come in twice to cover the whole year group. They send 4 people at a time. So we liven it up that way, and they are great at presenting it. It's really mixed up. And then for our Year 10s, we actually get them in the computer room, and we give them a salary, and we say, right, we actually use the median salary, so that we're not talking about something that isn't too far either way. And then we say, right, okay, if I'm earning my median salary, what am I going to have taken off that? And they use a calculator to do that. So we're not expecting them to do the maths in it, because we're trying to take that maths out of it. We're trying to say, well, this is financial education. You've learned already how to do the maths bit. We're now doing, because at the end of the day, you're not going to check your own salary with pen and paper anymore. You're going to use an online calculator. We talk about the student loans might come out, and they get their net salary. And then at that point, we then move to the next lesson. We move to the computer room again, and what we say is, right, we can afford to spend this much on our property. How are we going to do that? And by the end of it, they pretty much worked out that they're going to have to, at the beginning, share, because they can't afford, certainly where we live, the rents of one individual renting. And then so much information is out there nowadays, they can find an estimated council tax bill, an estimated gas bill for those properties. And they're really then looking, by the end of that series of lessons, at creating a household budget. And so by really, we're depersonalizing it by putting numbers in, telling them the numbers, but we're then giving them the ownership and saying, actually, you can work this through. We have it all in stages. They're not just left to do a project by themselves. We work through the stages, and by making it personal in that way, we really find that they do get quite engaged in the process. And then you always end up with 1 or 2 who are going to move to the Bahamas, but and then, or by the end of the lesson, have worked out they'd much rather have a penthouse in London. And then you say, well, that's lovely. How are you going to finance that, and which career path are you going to go down in order to finance that lifestyle that you'd like? But we find by personalizing it to their age and stage, but by providing case studies so that they're not using their own personal information, we find that helps with the delivery.
Yeah,
and I think it helps that we personally as a team are really passionate about it. We can get all excited about VAT rates and whatever. That I appreciate that most people aren't going to get highly excited, but I think by using a mixture of external presenters and in-house provision along with videos provided by other people, I think we get a reasonable mix there to keep the interest up. Yep.
Can I just add on to that, please?
Yeah.
Some things that have worked really well for us was we brought up a mortgage calculator from any one of the banks which do them. We inputted in an average salary, so said that there were on 2 of them in the house on £18,000 each. We said that they had no debt, which would be highly unusual, and then how much of a mortgage they could get. We then went on to Rightmove and had a look at the homes that were for sale in the area, and to which quite a lot of them suddenly discovered they weren't living around here anymore when they were older. The other thing that we've discussed with our students, which and quite a lot of adults think this as well, is the tax and the national insurance. That when you get to, I think it's around £51,000 of 40% tax, you're not paying 40% tax on the £51,000 that you earn. It's you've got your tax-free allowance, and then you've got your tax-free allowance and that gap, and you're only paying 20% on that, and then the 40% comes on the next bit. The same with national insurance. And the students were quite amazed to see that, because quite a lot of them was like, oh, I'm never going to earn over 50,000. I'll just do 49,999 and then I'll be fine. And it's like, but you're only taxed 40% on that little bit above what you're earning there.
Yeah, it's a really, really important one, and I can't tell you how many times I've explained that to adults, who, including, I'm now going to shame him, including my brother, who phoned me and said, I'm not sure I want to take this salary increase because I'm going to be paying more tax than I was before. And I had to explain to my own brother that that was not the case. Oh dear, he's going to kill me now.
Only if he watches the recording, you're fine.
Yeah, that's super. I could carry on talking about this. I know we need to wrap it up, but a huge thank you, Zoe and Kat, for your contribution. I hope everybody listening has taken something away from that they can think about in their own settings. And I'd just like to welcome Jonathan back just for a sort of final reflections and a goodbye.
Fantastic. Thank you, Russell. And thank you, Zoe and Kat. It's absolutely fantastic session. And just, I was blown away by these kind of really concrete examples of how you're integrating it across the curriculum whilst having a really kind of clear spine running through what you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic. I was really struck particularly by the example of thinking about food, and just one of those examples where you don't even realize you're kind of using financial literacy in your day-to-day life, because it's just so part and parcel of how we live and how we navigate the world. I think the other thing that really struck me was, people often think that when we're talking about financial education within PSHE, that it's somehow a less sensitive area. It's a bit, it's a bit easier to manage. But of course, as you both said, this can be hugely emotive, and you both for pupils and for teachers as well. And those issues of teacher confidence and the fact that the issues that they might be addressing in the classroom might be ones they're struggling with in their own lives is a really pertinent kind of point to think about when thinking about financial education as well. So. And that those final points you were making, Zoe, about kind of thinking about your future, and this is what we want, our schools to be doing, helping young people link what they're learning to their life goals, to what's important to them, to their ethics. And I think you've beautifully shown how you're doing that in your schools. So thank you all so much. And yeah, so we will be, tomorrow is our final session for Talk Money Week, where we will be exploring a range of issues relating to money and young people, including cryptocurrency, cashless society, and gambling education. And it only leaves me to say thank you all for coming. And any questions, the Young Money has an advisory service, which we will put the contacts in the chat. And also, if you want to contact the PSHE Association, info@pshe-association.org.uk. Thank you very much, and hope to see many of you tomorrow as well. Thank you.